stunning skyline, to the entertainment capital of the world in Los Angeles. It's all been building to right here, right now. The best tournament field ever is here in Amsterdam to battle for the game's greatest prize. Let's get it on! The 2017 Hearthstone World Championship begins in 3, 2, 1.
Greetings, my friends. So nice to see you around the hearth once more. Who shall etch their name into Hearthstone's eternal lore? Gather round the fire, for there's a new tale to be told. Welcome to the 2017 World Championship!
Of a community of 70 million, there can be only one. The greatest tournament field ever has gathered in Amsterdam. 16 of the world's best players. Now, their final challenge begins. A quest for the World Championship and a place in Hearthstone's eternal lore. Who will be the one?
The dream is alive.
Will Kalento capture the crown and add to his mystique as perhaps the greatest to ever play the game?
Of course. If you will give me enough tries, I can beat anybody.
Or will it be Jason Joe of China, who snares Hearthstone's most glittering prize?
Last year I didn't make the champion, so this year I really want to win this one.
After dominating the Asia-Pacific region, can Tom 60229 of Taiwan take down the world title?
Everyone here is a good player, but that's not going to change my game plan.
Or will the Year of the Mammoth culminate with Muzzy hoisting the trophy?
People will recognize that I'm the best in the world this year.
16 of the world's best players. 4 days of Hearthstone at its highest levels. A chance to be remembered forever. This is the 2017 Hearthstone World Championship. Because there can be only one.
The Hearthstone Championship Tour continues. It's go time! This is the Hearthstone World Championship!
Let the games begin. Welcome to Amsterdam, one of Europe's most colourful and charming cities and perfect setting for the Hearthstone World Championship. It's going to be a magical 4 days here as the best tournament field ever assembled battles for the game's biggest prize. We'll be covering all of the action from inside the Beurs van Ballage, a historic venue in the heart of Amsterdam that's hosted royal weddings and now has been conjured into the world's most spectacular tavern. We are here and ready to go. We have the Hearthstone ready. It's gonna be ready to be used now as the Hearthstone is gonna be kicking off for 4 days of World Championship. All the players are here and ready to go. So welcome to the 2017 Hearthstone World Championships. We've got plenty of action going to be coming up for these 4 days, and at the end of it, we're going to be crowning a world champion. I am Raven, and joining me to kick off the show is Sottle, and that's admirable. Guys, how's it going?
It's going fantastic. Not only am I excited to be at the culmination of the 2017 Hearthstone Championship Tour, but also just in a fantastic city. Greatly enjoyed my time in Amsterdam so far. Great mix of, let's say, nightlife as well as culture with some of the architecture and fantastic museums that I know you've been visiting, Admiral.
Yeah, the museums, the food, just the architecture and the culture, it's all been great. And this tournament has been so awesome to look at. Usually when you come into one of these, you think the group of doom is somewhere. It's not really anywhere in this one. It's more like there's just 4 groups of doom in the tournament.
The Tournament of Doom. We can see what the next few days are going to be looking like. Today, we're going to be kicking off Groups A and B. First round matches going to start off the day, winners matches, and then some elimination matches. There are players that are going to end the day quite disappointed.
Yeah, and then Friday we run it all back for Groups C and D, and then the weekend is where the rubber really starts to hit the road. Saturday and Sunday we're going to have our deciders matchups, and then Sunday the semi-final and the final, which will crown our 2017 Hearthstone World Champion.
Got shivers just thinking about Sunday. Just a few matches, but the most important matches of these players' lives, no doubt at this point. And speaking of the players, let's take a look at how everyone managed to get here. Kicking off with the Bahamas Winter Championship. Stanudachi took the victory there with Frozen in a second place, and Samuel Zhao and Doc Pone from Canada coming up as the finals of the top 4. A hugely stacked tournament.
At the start, where it looked like the underdogs were going to be the talk of HCT, then spring came about.
And in spring, it was a surprising, let's say, hometown crowd rooting for Kalento. This was held in Shanghai, China, but China as a country adores Kalento, and we're happy for him to go through as the runner-up. But the other big story there was Hoi, your champion, perhaps put in the best performance we've seen in any HCT event so far, just in terms of technical play.
Yeah, then the Summer Championship, the most recent one, being played out at the Blizzard Arena in California. Surrender ended up taking the victory in one of the best finals of a Hearthstone tournament I've ever seen, versus Orange, who ended up being the runner-up. Purple and Jason Zhou bringing up the top 4 there.
And this is really where camaraderie stood out, from Purple and Orange practice, and then looking at Hoi and Surrender winning championships.
And then the last call qualifiers, the top point earners from each region, round this out. 3 names that you will recognize: Muzzy, Tom, and Omega Zero. If you've been following along, they've all had their appearances. Sintalol may be a name you might not be familiar with. He amassed a huge number of points, 148 in the Europe region. But when it comes to Swiss play, tournament play, Sinto hasn't quite got it done just yet.
Yeah, all eyes are going to be on Sintalo as soon as he plays, as he just walked past us there. Because,
sorry, buddy, it's true.
His tournament experience it hasn't quite gone well for him, but this is the one to pull it out of the bag. We've spoken to all of the players, and I think it's a genuine sentiment that being crowned the world champion is the most important thing. But let's not forget, there's a little bit of prize money on the line here, as the winner has a $250,000 prize with a $1 million prize pool total.
Yeah, if you're going to stay here and celebrate in Amsterdam, I think it's like 1.22 to 1 is the Euro USD. But there's still nothing to scoff at there. $1 million this weekend for the competition. An unbelievable finish this year.
Yeah, and this is also what they're playing for, the World Championship Trophy, custom-made Hearthstone trophy. It lights up. It's amazing.
And, you know, to a man, that is a life-changing amount of money, but to a man, when we asked them the question, money or the trophy and the prestige that comes with it, every single one of them said the trophy.
Yeah, easy as that. So we've showed you what all the players are playing for, but what are you looking forward to, at least for the next couple of days, Sol?
There's so many little threads and ripples running through this tournament, but for me, I think 2 of the most talented players qualified all the way back in winter, and for me, that's Frozen and Stanudachi. They both actually took a little bit of time off after that, and they relied on their natural talent to be able to bring them back in with a bang. But then they were almost polar opposites when we spoke to them. Stan was not really confident. He wasn't really feeling his play. He'd been playing a ton of arena, topping the arena leaderboards, whereas when we spoke to Frozen, Frozen had dove right back in the deep end, come up with an incredible strategy, analyzed all the data, felt confident, prepared, and I think that speaks testament to him as a player.
I think so as well, but I really look at that relying on your natural talent effect, and that seems to be spread across the field. Most players have chosen to bring those top 3 decks as their solid foundation and then hunt for that ever-important 4th deck to really bring their lineup together. The exceptions being Ant with the full aggressive lineup, looking to punish early starts, and then the defensive mage decks from Sintolol and from Frozen, who are looking to take advantage of the predictability of everybody else. So for me, the big question this weekend is who can cement themselves that Tavern Brawl immortality this weekend, and who's simply cemented themselves a house of cards.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see whether the risk takers in the tournament end up getting the reward, or whether the sort of almost slow and steady wins the race type approach. But we are not the only ones that are going to be bringing you this tournament. Of course, we are joined by Dan and Kibler. How's it going over there, guys?
Going great, Raven. I love being in Amsterdam. And greetings from the commentator's desk. My name is Froden. I'm joined by Brian Kibler, and we have the pleasure of bringing you guys the first of many epic best-of-5s this weekend. We have 4 matches that are going to kick off from groups A and B and be played in double elimination format. Let's go ahead and meet some of the names.
Yeah, first we're going to have Doc Pone versus Hoi, followed up by Orange versus Tom 60229. A lot of very experienced competitors in this lineup. Doc Pone, though, one of the decided underdogs.
That's right. And I mean, even then, you still have to consider every group is incredibly stacked. Look at Group B. You have Jason Zoe, semi-finalist from 2016 World Championships. You have Muzzy, the point leader, and many are pegging to be the best. You have Kalento, one of the most storied and historical great players, and you have one of those underdogs, the rookie Samuel Tao from Taiwan.
But all of these players, they battled through the championships to make it here, so it really could go any of these players' way.
Now, if we take a step back and look at how we got to this point, Cobalt and Catacombs hasn't been that long since the release. It's only been about a month, Kibler. So what are some observations that you've had heading into this weekend?
Well, one of the big stories, of course, if you've been playing ladder recently, has to be the Kazakus Raza Anduin Priest. That is a deck that was brought by virtually every one of the competitors here. But the real change from the previous metagame is the popularity of Warlock. Warlock has absolutely skyrocketed in terms of representation, all but one of the players bringing it, and a lot of that has to do with the power of the Possessed Lackey Voidlord combinations.
There's definitely some challengers to the throne of the best decks in Hearthstone, but as much as things change, some of them have stayed the same too, as we have Tempo Rogue also widely represented. Of course, Aggro Druid and Jade Druid, they've been around. The question will be, who gets to play Warlock perhaps this weekend because it's such a fearsome deck? Of course, the Highlander Priest does have a couple of additions to it in the Dragon variant as well, getting some very powerful cards from Cobalt and Catacombs.
Yeah, that 75% up there is kind of a misnomer because there are the Dragon Highlander Priests, which do break out from that, which are played by all but two of the competitors, rather, have brought some version of Kazakus Raza Priest.
That's right. There's an aggressive Dragon Priest that will happen later this weekend. As we get ready for our first match, we have Hoy from Denmark up against Doc Bone. As we take a little glimpse of the player lounge, Doc Bone is Sandy feeling relaxed all weekend long, Kibler, and Hoy is the one with a lot of expectations. So I'm looking forward to it. But before we go for our first match, let's kick it back over to Raven and the boys over at the analyst desk.
Thanks a lot, Dan. We're really getting close now to kicking off the first match of the World Championships. That is extremely exciting. I cannot wait. But we also have a bit of a special announcement for everyone as well at home, and everyone here, as it's very relevant to a lot of these players. The Hearthstone Global Games is going to be returning this year. And for those of you who don't know, the Global Games is 48 countries competing against each other. Teams of 4 going at it to decide who is going to be the best Hearthstone country in the world. And it's back.
Yeah, and there's just a few points we want to go through here to talk you through this. The first and most important, at least in the immediacy, is that Season 1 counts. These points that you can gather count right now to qualify as your anchor. The top point earner in each country will qualify as team anchor by right, alongside 3 remaining players voted in by your local community. Different this year because you're not just voting for one player with your vote, you get to vote for all 3 and really get that fantasy football dream team package together. And
that's one of my most favorite things about it so far is that we have that. It was so hard for me to pick one from the Americas region, and while I ultimately did, I really wanted to pick like 9-10 people when it was all said and done.
Yeah, also as well, the format is going to be changing, so we'll be going from groups into Swiss, which will be very exciting. We might see some countries play off against each other that we didn't see in the past season. So I'm looking forward to that. I can't wait till that kicks off. But that's enough talk of the future. Let's get back to right now. We've talked about all these players, all of their strengths and all of their weaknesses, and let's see exactly what they think of each other.
I mean, it's the World Championship. It has to be one of the best field of players. Every year it's gotten better, and this has to be the best by far.
It's the strongest ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary.
It'll be a great show, I think.
Yeah, wish it was easier.
If I were to pick a player to win, I don't know how to decide.
I actually don't know.
Muzzy.
Old name people will recognize that I'm the best in the world.
No one's a favorite.
I'd say maybe like Purple's a favorite.
No, I mean, I had the worst first match of anyone in the tournament.
Purple versus Sintalol.
That's cool. I really like Frozen's lineup, similar to mine, just a little bit better.
I have the best lineup, and probably the most well-prepared player, and it's not even close.
There's so many good players that it's so hard to say like one name.
This is the most stacked tournament I've been playing in.
What you got?
This is the best field the world has to offer.
There are so many players in this tournament that I would rank among the absolute best in the world. I'm pretty happy to be one of them.
Just in case you weren't keeping a tally on who was who in terms of the voting, then we've got the poll straight for you now from the players. Just a note, some of the players actually couldn't name one name. They had to name at least two. So the percentages for those more mathematically inclined might not quite add up. But Muzzy, 19% of the player vote, 14% for Hoy, and 14% for Klento as the top three.
And it does surprise me a little bit not to see either of the Mage Boys in there. Frozen and Scintillol both miss out, because when we've spoken to a lot of the other players, they've mentioned that they really missed the boat on that Mage lineup. That Scintillol there is looking very happy that he brought. They all said, oh, that deck's good, we should have tested it more. So obviously using other factors to pick their favorites as well.
Yeah, and we just had a little look at what the players thought of each other, but let's take a look at the caster predictions. This happens for every HCT tournament. We do our best. Some do a little bit better than others. So let's kick off with the current champion of the caster predictions. It is Sottle. Who are you picking for the World Championship?
I did have a change of heart on this, I will confess. I don't know whether that'll work against me. For my Choose Your Champion, for my pack earner, I've got Stan Udachi locked in. But I've changed my mind to Frozen based on our player interviews. Because as I mentioned in our intro, they were kind of polar opposites when we spoke to them. And Frozen's confidence really spoke through to me. He has this inspired strategy where he ran the data like many players do, statistical analysis, came up with the best lineup, but then he didn't pick that lineup. He picked a lineup that countered that lineup, giving credit to the intelligence of the other 15 players to have done the same thing, but then to stick on that, quote, best lineup. He's gone one level further, and I think that's why he's going to win.
Let's see if it pays off. Admirable, who are you going for?
You know, coming into almost any tournament that Purple's competing, my heart pretty much says Purple. I can think back to 2015 when he won the Americas Championship, but my head for this one really said Muzzy. He's been the top competitor, I would say, for about 2 years running, and when it comes to mechanical play, I don't think there's anyone in the world who has an edge on him when those deep combat scenarios really matter in the early stages, and because this tournament's very much about that, I think Muzzy's got to be the favorite to take it.
Okay, so Muzzy, Admirable going with the player pick as well in the form of Muzzy. Let's check back in with Dan and Kibler to see what you guys picked. What do you go for?
I am shocked at the lack of faith in the original god of Hearthstone. He has unfinished business from 2014, and my pick in packs and will be the real champion is Klento from Ukraine. How can you guys forget about Klento and his greatness when he brought great decks? Love his lineup, very solid, great tech choices, and I think he's still one of the top technical players in the world.
For me, I'm always a fan of people who go against the grain, who try to beat the decks other people think are the best, and much like Sottle, my pick is Frozen. I actually had a chance to try out his decks on my stream about a week ago, and was just super impressed with the level of tech that went into building them, just the intelligence of some of the unusual decisions in that mix. I think he's got an amazing shot.
Yeah, worth noting too that Kibler did pick Frozen first, and then Sottle was convinced later, so once again, Sottle stealing someone else's analysis for his predictions. Back over to you guys.
Thanks for that. So we work out why Sol's been the most successful in the picks. Is he just steals everyone else's great picks. I'm just going to run with that. I'm not sure what the numbers are.
Success breeds jealousy. That's all I can say. Right now.
Okay, well, my pick at least, just to let's just scooch over this before Sol gets too angry. My pick is actually going to be Surrender. The finals in the Summer Championship was one of the best finals I watched, as I mentioned earlier, and I think, outside of, say, the lineups discussion that you guys have talked about quite a lot, for me, I just think Surrender's an exceptional player.
He is.
One of the best, to be completely honest. And in a tournament that has the whole tournament's amazing players, Surrender just peaks it just a little bit for me. But caster predictions are done. Everything's lined up. Everything's ready. We're ready. The players are ready. I hope you are ready. So without further ado, let's kick off the first match with our spring champion. It's Hoy.
And Hoy took home that spring championship on the back of an exemplary performance, incredible technical, patient play, and is looking to carry that momentum through to a world championship title now.
Yeah, and his opponent calls himself the underdog of the tournament. It's Dog Pone.
That's right. Doc Pone is cool.
Let's do this! Hoi versus Doc Pone.
I think like Doc Pone is probably the underdog going into Worlds.
Boy, whenever I see him play, he doesn't make mistakes.
I think like he makes a bit more mistakes than some of the other pros.
He's really consistent. He's a really consistent player, and that what makes him really scary.
I'm not saying he's bad, but like if you have to compare him to like players as Mossy, Purple, and those players, I think like definitely he's a bit weaker than those guys.
There's not gonna be any gift from him, that's for sure.
I still think he's really solid.
You need to play almost perfectly to beat this guy, so I'll have to put my best game on.
Hoi versus Doc Pone. Ready, set, go!
Pro meets Joe in the kickoff match here in the 2017 Hearthstone Championship Tour World Championships, as we have Hoi from Denmark go up against Doc Pone from Canada, a rookie up against one of the more storied players in Hearthstone's competitive history. My name is Frody. I'm joined by Brian Kibler, and we have the pleasure of bringing you guys this first best-of-5 match to begin all the matches here at HCT Amsterdam. Kibler, going into this, what first sticks out to you in this head-to-head?
Well, as far as the decks are concerned, Doc Pone is bringing pretty much what everyone in the field expected, the 4 big decks. He does have the Jade Druid rather than Aggro Druid. That's kind of been a back and forth among a lot of the players. Hoi, he still has the Highlander Priest and the Control Warlock, but he's not playing the Tempo Rogue. He's playing the Murloc Paladin, which is actually a very strong deck in his lineup against pretty much everything Doc Pone's bringing.
It's a comfort pick. Hoi even mentioned that he brought Paladin because he feels like he should bring Paladin. It's his historically best performing class for him in tournaments. But is he really that comfortable? He kind of mentioned he's still get nervous going up against Doc Pone.
Yeah, well, Hoi has a lot of expectations here. Doc Pone, he's saying he's the underdog. No one expects him to win. There's a lot of people who expect a lot from Hoi. And you actually had a chance to talk to the players just this morning, and it really came through in how well rested they felt. Hoi, he was pretty nervous last night. He had trouble sleeping. Said he only got maybe 2 hours of sleep. Doc Pone, he just slept comfortably for 6 or 7 hours. He is well rested and ready to go.
That's really rough. So Hoi definitely working on fatigue to start things off, but I guess it's better that you're the first match as opposed to later as it drags out through the day. Let's go into the first game here. We have Priest versus Druid. Remember, Doc Pone is playing the Dragon Highlander Priest, which has a lot of fantastic tools from the new expansion. People are looking at Dustbreaker, the first culprit that strikes down a lot of these aggressive hordes with 3 damage to all minions.
And Hoi playing the Aggro Druid. This is a matchup that can be pretty tough for the Druid, because there are so many tools, especially in the Dragon version, including that Dustbreaker, that can clear off the Druid's board. The Aggro Druid relies on getting generally a number of smaller minions in play, buffing them with either Mark of the Lotus, we see in the left side of Hoi's hand, or Power of the Wild, and if you're able to AoE that board, it can be difficult for them to rebuild.
That's right. And Hoi saw that Doc Pone kept a handful of cards. Having Raza in the opening hand is something that he kind of reads. But with this Mark of Yasharaj and Chain of Raven combo, it's a very powerful card to start things off. Look at Doc Pone picks up a way to deal with the Chain of Raven early on.
Yeah, the Holy Smite here is actually pretty huge, because the Mark of Yasharaj would turn that Raven into a 4/4, which would prevent Doc Pone from being able to use any of his removal spells on it easily and allow him to just keep up the pressure. Now, Power Word Shield plus Smite, that's a 1/5 Cleric, and no board left over for Hoi.
Yeah, now Mark of Yasharaj can't do anything, and now all of a sudden, instead of having the board and snowballing it, Hoi has no chance to actually even win the board.
Hoi does still have the South Sea Captain, which will pull Patches out of his deck, giving him a 3/3 and a 2/2 on the board. That will stand up against this Cleric, at least immediately, and potentially allow him to use some of these AoE buff effects in his hand.
That is true. Sometimes you just use Mark of Yasharaj simply as a 2/2 buff to accelerate your board position. Of course, the big thing that Hoi is trying to land is a big swing opportunity with the Corridor Creeper. This card has dominated the early fields of Kobolds and Catacombs to the point where people are just keeping it the opening hand because it's so powerful, and you know that you can discount it very easily because of cards like Patches and early game minions.
It's especially powerful in a deck like the one Hoi is playing that has lots of cards that make multiple minions. Whether they are a pirate bringing out patches or living mana, lots of things that can enable you to build a board that, one single sweeper effect. Speaking of a sweeper, that is a Duskbreaker drawn for Dockpone, but so far he does not have another dragon. Oh, no, he does. I missed that draw last turn.
That was from the Power Shield.
Here we go. Sitting right next to it, he's hiding.
I love this play here from Hoi too, because even though people look at Power of the Wild as a +1/+1 to your minions, Hoi really wants to get this Mark of Yasharaj down and be able to buff his board. And he also saw that Dockpone played the top-decked Holy Smite, meaning that if Dockpone had some kind of early game remove that he kept, he probably would have played that instead.
Yeah, and Hoi now leaves him with the ability to potentially play South Sea Captain into coin Mark of the Lotus next turn, which gives him the ability to get that 4/4 Captain out, as well as get the patches buffed to 3/3 immediately when it's attacking. All of this does line up pretty poorly, unfortunately, for him against that Duskbreaker, which Dockpone just drew.
There's a couple of the key differences that separate Dockpone from maybe some of the other lists you even see on the ranked play. You have Alex Straza as a top-end dragon. Dockpone does not play Bone Drake or Bookworms, some of those mid-range dragons instead. And he feels like Alex Straza removes the need for reliance on the Prophet Veiling combinations, because you can lower your opponent's health and sometimes not even use Raza. You just use Shadow Reaper Ando and hero power over the course of multiple turns.
One interesting thing for Hoi here, having played the Power of the Wild last turn, he now does have a target for the Mark of Yasharaj that will draw him a card.
Yeah.
So he could choose to buff this this Panther here and either get this Cleric off the board or just get 5 damage in. That would also be leaving his board less vulnerable to a Duskbreaker compared to just a big push with the Mark of the Lotus.
Yeah, Duskbreaker is something you're fearing. Hoi saw that the card being kept for Dockpone is still in the hand, actually both of them, because there's Acolyte of Pain as well. So Hoi will try to remove most of this board, it looks like. Cleric's a big threat.
And removing the Cleric is pretty crucial here too, because it forces Dockpone to have no way to attack into the South Sea Captain, even with the Duskbreaker. So Duskbreaker can come down and AoE the board, but there will still be a 4/1 Captain remaining if it does.
If you're in Hoi's position, you see Dockpone keep 2 cards in the opening hand that he still hasn't played by now. Are you sweating a little bit? Because he's still playing the Duskbreaker from 2 cards that he hasn't seen.
Right, and that's got to be pretty scary. It's one of the cards you may expect that is in your opponent's hand, given the fact that there was something kept. But now, the fact that there are still several other cards there can be pretty scary for him as well.
This could be 2 back-to-back turns of immense pressure from Hoi. He has the Quarter Creeper, which he's been setting up. He's been aware that even if Dockpone cleared it, he would have a very cheap big beast. And he has Beardtide Hydra to follow it up. And those are back-to-back minions that's not going to be easy for Dockpone to answer.
Yeah, lots of big threats here from Hoi. And trading here does mean the Creeper costs just 1 mana. He could even play the Mark of Yasharaj on it immediately if he wants to use the rest of his mana for the turn, as well as potentially draw into another threat he could play. Yeah, he's going to go ahead and do that. Mark of Yasharaj right now, that's a 7/7. And the Corsair, not so impressive, but it's no longer bringing out patches, but does just give him a little bit more presence on that board.
And now Dockpone will have an option between Draconid Operative and Raza the Chained. And normally, some of the differences could be chalked up to how important it is to have tempo onto the board or even have that extra card. But in a lot of cases, since that 7/7 is out there and dominant, and you really want to be able to hero power, I think Raza here's a good call.
Yeah, Raza, if nothing else, just gives you effectively 2 life per turn. Your hero power goes to 0 mana. It enables you to just keep healing yourself and getting your life total further out of range of that threat.
As a position from Hoi that he's been hoping for, where Priest does not have an answer to the first threat. So how does he hope to deal with 2?
Hoi has a number of interesting options here. He can choose to just push his 7 damage to the face, which does leave him a little bit more vulnerable to getting the Hydra specifically killed, but he needs that 7 damage, especially with that Raza in play. He needs to keep pushing damage. So I like this more aggressive push of the damage to the face rather than trying to trade to protect the slightly bigger minion.
Right, this is the turn for a Dragonfire Potion if Docpone has one. We are aware, of course, that we'll try to fix the hand screens as soon as possible. But that's not the case here. Docpone has Blood Mage Thalnos. He has Potion of Madness, Spirit Lash. A little bit awkward in order to deal with this threat. He doesn't even have the ultimate card to answer. The mother of all removals, Psychic Scream. That's also going to be a turn 7 threat.
Blood Mage plus Spirit Lash has got to be at least somewhat attractive here because it enables him to kill the Pirate. It enables him to heal up a bit, get some damage on the Hydra, and then potentially attack into and kill the Corridor Creeper.
Right.
Looks like Docpone, he was debating going with the Operative, which was online thanks to the draw of the Primordial Drake.
It's so scary because of the threat of Savage Roar. Even if there's just 2 minions on board, that's 6 plus the 15 on board. That's threatening your 21 life. You're really close to dying at that point.
And this gets rid of the Pirate and gets some damage in against Hoy, but there's 15 power left up.
Right. He is out of range of Savage Roar and Hero Power. Ooh, Living Mana. One of the most powerful cards available to the Aggro Druid, but is this the turn to play it going into turn 7?
Right, this is a scary spot for Hoy because a Psychic Scream here would not only eliminate his entire board, but if they're the Living Mana treants, eliminate all of his mana. So that ends up being a pretty terrifying proposition for the Danish player.
I do want to say, though, Aggro Druid versus the Highlander Priest is a heavily unfavored matchup for the Aggro Druid, given how much removal. And then you compound it by the fact that this is the Dragon version, which has additional area effect, like Primordial Drake, Dustbreaker. So how much time do you really have to save Living Mana? Is it a risk that you have to take?
I don't think so in this spot. He does have the Enchanted Raven. He has the Galactic Crawler as well if he just wants to go a little bit wider. And there is, of course, I mean, even just looking at Docpone's hand, that Blood Mage plus Spirit Lash, if he does play Living Mana, is an enormous swing. That would lead to essentially just gaining his entire life total back and clearing all the small minions from the board. And yeah, Hoy, he wants to go a little bit wider, make it so that there's just a little bit of damage available for Docpone.
Yeah, that is backbreaking. There's going to be 7 minions on the board times 2, so 14 life gain, plus killing everything except for the Galactic Crawler at 2/3 at his disposal.
Yeah, and the Potion of Madness last turn may not have looked like a huge deal. May only have looked like it was taking a small minion off the board, but it set this up. It set up attacking both 5 power minions into the 7 health minions.
That's right.
And enabling the Blood Mage plus Spirit Lash to clear off those big minions. So
that's right.
The little play from Docpone last turn set up this really big one this turn.
Doc just had to have the discipline to take a little risk in hoping that Druid can't finish the game with 2 cards.
Just gained 16 life.
Yeah.
And removed Hoy's entire board save 1 Galactic Crawler, and has Primordial Drake set up for next turn against the Living Mana.
Right. That is, of course, if Hoy had some way to additionally buff, if he had Mark of the Lotus, in addition to the Living Mana, that's when it starts getting a little scary. But Hoy does not really have much of a choice. He has to reload, and this matchup, again, on paper, very favored for the Dragon Highlander Priest. So not too shocking to see it commandly take the board, but that was a scary moment for Docpone.
And now things are equally scary, if not more so, for Hoy, because he had good pressure going, but now suddenly the tables are absolutely turned the other direction. And it is Docpone who is firmly in the driver's seat, as Hoy is very low on resources, and Docpone has a lot of life left. And this is just what we were talking about at the beginning. You know, if there is a single big sweeper, that's often enough for the Priest to stabilize in this matchup, because they have access to so many more. And that the Spirit Lash in particular got Docpone not only into a safe board state, but up to a safe life total. So even if he didn't have an immediate clear against a lot of things, he would still have the ability to clean things up and stay alive.
It's a very good technical play from Hoy. He actually purposely gives himself 1 less treant in the case he draws Savage Roar.
Yes.
So we have 3 mana to play it in case Docpone couldn't answer everything. But Docpone can. He has the Primordial Drake, And also, he even just picked up Shadow Visions, which would have given him another out to pick up removal like the Dragonfire Potion.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and bounce the Acolyte off of the Firefly to pick up a card prior to playing the Primordial Drake, which will get him another card, as well as clear off Hoy's entire board.
Hoy gets the bad news that Primordial Drake lands on the board. And I can't think of another card to pull him out here. He's going to see his next draw, but Druid of the Storm, incredibly weak. I guess you could play it as a poisonous minion.
Yep.
Oh, that's about it. Jeez. And in the meantime, Darkbone will now be starting to threaten to kill the Aggro Druid because he's stabilized, and now he has really powerful minions coming up.
Yeah, and this is essentially all over, but the crying. Darkbone has a handful of cards that he can use to clean up Hoy's board, and more than enough life to work with. That Shadow Pain allows him to take out the poisonous spider here, and it is not going to be any closer in this game. We're going to see the first game go to the rookie.
That will be a concession. Darkbone strikes the first blood in this best of 5, taking out the aggressive Druid with his Dragon Highlander Priest.
And that is a game that went kind of the way we expected. That's one of the pretty heavily favored matchups in the Priest's favor. And now Hoy is going to have to battle through the other decks from Darkbone.
Yeah, a great start from Doc, but he's going to need a lot more to take down the Spring Champion. We'll have a lot more when we come back here for HCC Amsterdam. Don't go anywhere.
When you have teammates, like, you can discuss like different strategies and decks. So sometimes like you have an idea, but you're not sure if it's good or not. And then like I know like my teammates are good, so I can always like ask them to see if right or not. My name is Fredrik Høj Nielsen, and I'm a full-time professional Hearthstone player. I'm playing for Planet Ord. I qualified for the World Championship by winning HCT Spring.
Spring Champion Hoy!
일단 확장팩이 나온 지 얼마 안 됐기 때문에 그 팀원들이랑 최대한 새로 나온 연구들을 어떻게 잘 활용할 것인지에 초점을 맞춰서 연습을 많이 했고요. 호인의 집에서 셋이 모여가지고 같이 연습을 했어요.
I think it's great that Surrender is competing at World Championship together with me because then I know he's like 100% focused. We're definitely going to practice together to the World Championship.
셋 다 같은 토너먼트를 할 때만 같이 준비하고 보통은 한 명만 나가는 대회 같은 거 있잖아요. 그럴 때는 그냥 막 무슨 데 가져가야 될까 하고 물어볼 때가 있긴 한데 근데 보통은 그럴 때는 그렇게 좋은 대답을 얻기가 힘들어요.
Like definitely do my best to beat Surrender, but I hope like that would happen in the final or something where like because I also know how much this means for Surrender.
He said that he wanted, not just he wanted, he promised his teammate Hoy that he would win the tournament so they could not face off in the group stage of the World Championship. He kept his promise. He is the champion.
일단 호이 선수를 호이랑 만난다는 것 자체가 16강 일단 우리 그 조별 그룹 매치에서는 만나지 않거든요. 그룹 매치 통과하고 8강부터 만나게 되는데 8강 지나서 그러니까 8강에서 호이를 만났는데 호이를 만약에 제가 이긴다면은 전 4강에 진출하는 거거든요.
Dakpone was a relatively unknown until last March when he took the Bahamas and the Hearthstone world by storm.
Dakpone, the 32-year-old player from Montreal, Quebec in Canada, becomes our fourth and final player to book their spot at the World Championship.
People told me that it was gonna be life-changing, but life changes when you want life to change, right? So for me, it didn't change much. I still have my job, I still have my friends, all my coworkers, and I wanted to go and have some fun with my girlfriend, traveling a bit, and I did not play Hearthstone very much. If I win, then maybe it's gonna change. But I'm the perfect example of an underdog. The field is not stacked because Dakpone is there.
The story right now is all about this guy.
All the other players know that I'm not putting the same kind of effort as they're doing. So they probably believe that I'm not at the same level. And they're probably right. But maybe it's less pressure for me and more pressure for them. As in any sport, the underdogs, they feel less pressure. The World Championship means a lot to me too, but it's not as life-changing. I'll still have my job and I'll just go back to my life as it was before. If I win, the message for people that have other things to do but still want to compete, I showed that it was possible. I'm an underdog, but still have to beat me.
So Dakpone considers himself the underdog, but he's currently up 1-0 as his Highlander Priest was able to take down the aggressive Druid. But that's expected. When we looked at the matchup spread and we gridded it out, the Dragon Highlander Priest had good matchups all across the board. Its worst one was the Mirror, in quotation marks. From here, this is where it gets tough.
Yeah, and this is one of the decks from Hoy that is very powerful against Dakpone's lineup. In fact, this is probably the strongest matchup right here, the Murloc Paladin against the Jade Druid that Hoy has available this entire match.
That's right. Murloc Paladin has historically beat up against slower Druid variants. If you play a slower Ramp Druid or the Jade Druid, it takes too long for you to build up a wall of defense. And also, because Murlocs have such strong synergies that even if you go, you do have anti-aggro cards like Spreading Plague. They're very tall because of the Murloc buffs and how everything stacks together.
And Murloc Paladin is a deck that has gotten some powerful tools from the release of Kobolds and Catacombs. It's the reason we see Knife Juggler in this hand. Call to Arms, specifically, is one of the absolute strongest cards in the entire set, and it works very well in Murloc Paladin. Able to set up a board, often full of small Murlocs that you can then buff with a War Leader or a Gentle Megasol.
Hoy, going for the Cream Scale Jump, recognizes that there's a possibility Dakpone removes that in the first turn with the coin here in some capacity, but wants to get that Murloc buff guaranteed as opposed to play the Violent Inquisitor and then strand the battle.
Yeah, the Lesser Jasper Spellstone we just saw played by Dakpone, that's one of the very powerful tools that Jade Druid did get in the new set. It gives you early game interaction, which is very important against a deck like Murloc Paladin. We see getting that Murloc off the board immediately can definitely help slow Hoy down, and that's just what Dakpone needs.
Yeah, Dakpone opted to save the coin because his hand's pretty slow. He needs a lot of time, and right now his first real action is turn 10, Ultimate Infestation in the Arcane Tyrant. And then if he lets his opponent live, there's a threat of the Rockpool Hunter buffing 2-1, and then it would be a disaster.
Yeah, but now the just removal into removal, leaving Hoy with a pretty heavy hand. This is the Tarim plus Steed plus Corridor Creeper, especially Corridor Creeper drawn after the opening hand when multiple minions have already died. This is pretty slow from the Danish player, and not at all the start that he's looking for in the matchup.
Absolutely. Look at how big it would have been if Corridor Creeper was in the opening hand instead of Tarim, for example. They swapped spots. Corridor Creeper would cost 5, and most likely one of these minions could die. So if it costs 4, he'd play that right on curve and be able to keep up the pressure. So a very big difference whether or not he had it in his opening hand, and why so many top players recommend you keep Corridor Creeper.
And these are some of the only expensive cards in Hoy's deck. He only has a single copy of Corridor Creeper in addition to these that costs more than 5. And his 5 slot is a single Finjen. So it's a pretty unfortunate draw for Hoy here. He's going to need to find something that he can play immediately, which is essentially his entire deck. Call to Arms is probably the best draw. Righteous Protector, not too hot, doesn't really put that much pressure on, but is relatively difficult for Dakpon to necessarily easily remove before, say, Sunkeeper Tarim can buff it up.
And one thing that's also kind of interesting, too, is because Righteous Protector won't die to a Druid hero power, Quarter Creeper won't be discounted at 5. And Druid has nothing to play next turn. So in a very weird way, because Dakpon will be skipping, he actually denies Hoy any guaranteed play based off what he knows. He's going to have to rely on a draw.
And Dakpon's hand is very well suited to punishing a slow draw here from Hoy. He can buy a lot of time with those 2 copies of Spreading Plague in his hand. Malfurion the Pestilent can also buy a lot of time. And of course, that time gets him to Ultimate Infestation, which can really swing the game.
You know, Hoy thinks about what's the value in perhaps letting my opponent kill off a minion versus developing this Righteous Protector. But with Sunkeeper Tarim and Spike Recede in the hand, I think he wants to make turn 6 his big spike of power, as opposed to rely on his opponent not doing anything.
And now a Spellstone from Dakpon, which no longer causes double animation.
Yes.
And
okay, that's quite
War
the draw.
Leader is a very good draw here.
Yes.
It allows Hoy to push a bunch of damage right now. Perfectly fits into his curve alongside the hero power. You know, does potentially walk into a swipe from Dakpon here, but you know, there's a board of 3 minions could have gotten swiped up here, so there's not really a lot of options for Hoy. He has to pressure.
Yeah, and because Righteous Protector is kind of a little fragile minion onto the board, it ends up playing into Spreading Plague, but he also has Sunkeeper Tarim, which helps him get past the minions.
And especially with Murloc War Leader, because Tarim sets the minions to 3/3, but that doesn't count the War Leader buffs.
You're right.
So it means that all of the Murlocs will be 5 power to attack into and kill the Scarabs.
That's true. The problem, though, is then the Scarabs can kill off his own minions as well, so he's going to have to weigh what he really wants to do. If you want to prioritize setting up for Spike Recede and Quarter Creeper, and I think you want to put as much power onto the board. Do not give J. Druid time. Dakpon has not played Ramp. He hasn't played significant AoE removal spells like Swipe. So I think at this point, you just kind of put as much pressure and force your opponents to have it. And also, important to note, Dakpon kept both of these Spreading Plagues in his opening hand.
Well, I think he kept one of them.
Correct.
Yeah, he kept one of them in Mulligan the other.
Both of them in his starting.
Yeah.
And because he knows that this could be a really powerful card. Arcane Tyrant tries to swing the board.
Yeah, and the Spreading Plague here, you know, does give Hoy the opportunity to play Tarim and trade off the board, but that's never what you want to be doing against a Spreading Plague. You're trading, you know, pretty much your entire board for a card from your opponent.
Okay. Interesting.
Though the Tarim does set up a potential Corridor Creeper here as well, because he does trade off a bunch of minions. He can play the Creeper for free.
Yes, that is true.
There's also the possibility that he wants to just play, say, Spike Recede, get one of his Murlocs buffed, kill off one of these Scarabs. Because the Tarim here is essentially just setting up, you know, you're trading off 4 of your minions for 4 of your opponent's Scarabs, and doesn't really get you into a great position pushing damage. So I think he'd rather be in a position where he's using his other tools to pick away at these Scarabs. Okay, yeah, he's gonna go ahead and take out one of them. Yeah, this enables Hoy to remove one of them without losing his minions, and still play the Corridor Creeper here, and have his specifically War Leader still protected by the Tarim here. So nice sequencing from Hoy to maximize that Tarim.
Yeah, and this is exactly what we're talking about. Murloc Paladin can have tall and wide boards simultaneously. So Spreading Plague number 2 is no longer as powerful. Hoy saw that Dakpon's been keeping that for a long time. Now here's another thing too. Without coin or ramp, Hoy knows that Dakpon is going to be missing a lot of power swings like Malfurion, the Bestial being able to come down. So now Dakpon is really under the mercy of Murloc Paladin's tempo.
And without any way to specifically gain armor, that Spellstone is only just the unupgraded version here. He's used his hero power once since that's been in his hand, so it still takes 2 more armored upgrades. We can't get it online this turn to get a easier clear. I mean, he could attack both of his minions into the Tarim, play his Spreading Plague to get 4 Scarabs here, and have a single one of them able to trade into Tarim.
Yeah. Or so he thinks. Until Spike Recede might ruin his day.
It's the plan, at least.
mean, I think that's the best value that you can expect, given that the board will most likely continue to get tall and wider because Murloc War Leader exists, so you can't even expect the small tokens to be fodder for Spreading Plague.
Now there's two options for Hoy here. The Gentle Megasaur could allow him to play Megasaur plus Maul, which gives him another way to take down some of these scarabs. The Steed, though, on his Tarum allows him to have a sort of double layered protection for that War Leader here.
Yes.
And there's only currently 2 Murlocs that the Megasaur will be buffing.
And you want to try to, and another reason too is because it makes swipe math a little more complicated. You can't remove all the big threats simultaneously.
Right.
Let me think.
And also, I think Hoy's seen that Doc Bones had a pretty awkward hand. He's been playing coin, Spreading Plague into Spreading Plague. Potentially has a very heavy-handed amount of cards in his hand. So Malfurion is a very likely candidate to come up as well, which would set up for a good follow-up push. Attack with the War Leader would set up an easy Champion's Maul, but chooses not to, given that he has 2 or his multiple 5 attack sources.
And he still has the option to attack with the War Leader and Maul next turn if he wants to,
right?
Without exposing his War Leader to a potential unupgraded Spellstone.
That is also true too. Spellstone could be a problematic, but at the same time, Malfurion the Pestilent gets that 5 armor, so Spellstone should be able to at least get max damage.
Yep.
If Dakpo needs to. And Dakpo picks up Wild Growth, which might seem not that great now, but it does give him a way to actually get to Ultimate Infestation a turn earlier, which could make all the difference in the world whether or not he has enough time.
Yeah, it helps bridge him to 10 next turn, which, or rather, use next turn to bridge the following turn, which can be a very big deal.
The only thing about Malfurion is that your tempo is pretty bad. I mean, he hasn't gotten his Jades actually rolling, and you think about it, as much as it's fantastic to try and stall the game, you have to find a way to win the game, and Murloc Paladin's board doesn't look like it's disappearing anytime soon.
Yeah, there's a lot of remaining bodies on the board for Hoy here. And I assume we're going to see some Scarabs? Ooh. The Spooters?
Poison spiders.
That makes the Champion's Maul really appealing for Hoy here. Yeah. And this is a perfect Tidecaller into Megasaur as well.
I'm wondering if like Wind Fury just might even straight up threaten to end the game.
His Divine Shield. Divine Shield can allow him to use one of his Murlocs to take down a poisonous spider without any drawback. Doesn't lose anything. Yeah, Dakpone, I think, was debating here whether it was even possible to keep himself alive without removing any of these threats from Hoy. And yeah, the Divine Shield is pretty huge. Interestingly, it actually means that the Champion's Maul would lose the a single 1/1 if he decided to play it, but I think he's fine with.
Not full value, but I think he's willing to take that. Now, would you want to keep the Divine Shield on your War Leader, or would you want to?
Yeah, you definitely want the War Leader to have Divine Shield. I can even see just attacking face with both of these.
Sure.
And you have just the Tarum, who's going to leave another minion there, and you get 5 damage to the face. You are protecting a 5-power minion that would turn to a 3-power minion. But here, the fact that the Divine Shield is on the War Leader is huge, because that Spellstone no longer can take out the War Leader.
Exactly.
So there's far, far more damage capable of coming from Hoy's side, thanks to the buff of the War Leader on all of the other minions.
Yeah. Where's a Flame Strike when you need one, even if you had an opportunity to, right? Everything's at like 4 health, or even then it's complicated. Hoy set up such a powerful board that's resilient to all forms of AoE or single target removals. And Doc just took too long to get to this point.
Yeah, no ramp from Dakpone definitely left him in a situation where he was just playing from behind the entire time. He did have the opportunity to play removal into removal, which slowed down Hoy, which is why he has gotten to this late stage of the game. But we are seeing the power of the Murloc Paladin specifically with all these ability to buff these wide boards and make them into big threats. So even though there was Spreading Plague coming down, it didn't really do enough to keep the damage off the board. And yeah, this 2/2 Jade, 1/1 Jade, and a Spellstone, not really going to be enough. This does keep Dakpone from being able to even Wild Growth, so he can't Ultimate Infestation next turn. And I think we may just have lethal damage here. I think the rock pool allows us to set up so that the rest of the damage can just push through for lethal. Yeah, and Dakpon, he sees, okay, didn't actually even need the rock pool, just had the additional minion, and evens things up. Hoi takes, as Dakpon did in the first game, a pretty favorable matchup to an expected victory.
That's right, Hoi grabs an important win, and he is hoping to continue his winning ways that brought him much success back in Shanghai. Hoi is gonna breathe it in. Look at that smile. Is the spring champion for 2017.
It felt really great to win the spring championship. When I went to Shanghai, like, I would be disappointed if I didn't win. I don't have like the same feeling going into this tournament because it's so stacked. I feel like this is one step. I think like I can get to Worlds again if I lose this. But I feel like it's a little bit more pressure because my family is coming to watch. So I really, really want to make them proud. I think like me getting so far in Hearthstone is because of my family. I think they're a good luck charm. My mom and dad. In the beginning they were like a little skeptical about Hearthstone, but the money was starting to be rolling in. But now they're really, really supportive and they're really, really proud. My twin brother is also like competing. He's actually going to China next month to play in a big tournament. Well, I'm definitely the better player, but he's slowly getting there. PG couldn't make it. Some important bird stuff, you know. But she loves to watch the Twitch, so she's definitely gonna watch it.
Hoi's friends and family are joining him here in Amsterdam, rooting for him, and a lot of expectations around the world. Even the players themselves, if you missed the pregame show, were mentioning that Hoi's one of the most likely people to take the entire championship.
Yeah, he is someone who has had a lot of success outside HCT events over the past several years. This is really his breakout on this stage, and he's hoping to make the most of it.
There's also quite some funny stories around the Hearthstone community about Hoi and his twin brother.
Oh,
where,
yeah.
you know, Hoi even plays into the jokes like, "Yeah, did you?" Because they're like, "Are you smurfing Hoi? Am I playing like you on a different account?" He's like, "No, that's my twin brother."
I think someone was actually playing against Hoi's brother like yesterday in an event, and Hoi was sitting next to them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Are you using your like, wonder twin powers to communicate to him by hand?
Or was
What's
that
going
really
on?
Hoi sitting next to him and perhaps his twin brother the entire time?
Ah.
We never really know.
All right, well, we have a battle of druids here for game number 3 with the aggro druid from Hoi against Dakpon and his Jade druid. And now we see, once again, the turn 1 removal of the Lesser Jasper Spellstone coming up pretty huge here, because not only did it get the 2/2 off the board, it has now stranded these 2 Mark of Yasharaj in Hoi's hand from having a beast to enchant.
Hoi was banking off the fact that Dakpon kept so many cards, perhaps he didn't have early game removal when he prioritized ramp. But this is the kind of hand that you're looking for if you're Jade Druid. You're going to be able to curve Jade Behemoth and Aya very easily. And Hoi, he's got some plays, but he doesn't get the synergy with Mark Yasharaj and a Beast, which is a very big deal, being able to continue to get a little bit more ammo to pressure the Jade Druid.
Yeah, now the Corsair can come down, summon patches. He could use one of these Mark of Yasharaj just to push some damage, but that's not the buff he's looking for. When you have a wide board like this, you really want to have your Mark of the Lotus, your Power of the Wild, something that really increases the power of all of your minions. And without a Beast here, he's going to run a little thin on cards if he uses these buffs.
At the same time, though, perhaps even if he did draw cards, it wouldn't be nearly as impactful if Druid doesn't have a way to answer just 3/4 hitting him every turn. We've seen the power of the Totem Golem, be able to just single-handedly threaten Druid and ruin their game plan. The big thing is whether or not Dakpon can not only control the board, but also pressure Druid off of this Living Man. Because I think Living Man is going to be a big point of whether or not Dakpon is able to stabilize and win.
And I like this from Hoi, choosing to use the Mark of Yasharaj on his patches. It does protect his single 1 health minion from the threat of a cycled Wrath or a hero power, and does mean that he's able to use his mana to pressure, which is really important. It's not maximizing the use of Mark of Yasharaj, but he is maximizing the use of his mana, which is crucial when you're trying to kill your opponent before cards like Spreading Plague really shut you down.
Yeah, and one of the more interesting things about Jade Druid is that it's gotten better at fighting aggro these days, which is something that you don't really expect. Jade Druid is supposed to be a controlled deck killer. It's supposed to have infinite resources of Jade idols and able to put out up to, theoretically 30 Jades. But at the same time, most of the tools these days, especially in the World Championship, have gotten better at fighting aggressive decks. So even though traditionally an aggressive Druid has a huge percentage favor, it's actually much more even than you think.
Yeah, it has gotten a lot better with the inclusion of the Spellstone, and even just like Arcane Tyrant makes a big difference because it gives you the ability to ramp with a Nourish and still get something down that can impact the game. And Wild Growth into Wrath here, which looks like what Doc Pone is going for, is really going to slow things down. It's going to put Hoy down to just 3 power in play, while Doc Pone has 3 6-drops in his hand he can start casting next turn.
Yeah, and a little bit of a punish for buffing the patches instead of something else. Doc Pone would have to choose whether or not to hero power that down, or whether or not he would be able to use that Wild Growth. That is indeed Hoy's brother in the stands watching alongside that he's mentioning and also joking about. He's cheering on Hoy along with his other members of the family.
Now we're really sure that's his brother?
Are we really?
Not,
actually, is that
they're not
Hoy?
trading places here?
No. Marka Yasharaj here from Hoy. He drew Savage Roar, which is his finisher if he's able to get this living mana board. But does he have enough time? Because Doc Pone is now starting to hit his most powerful cards against the aggressive Druid with Spreading Plagues and all of his Jades.
Yeah, another Mark of Yasharaj on a non-beast minion, and you can see just how Hoy's resources are dwindling here, down to just 2 cards. Does keep the pressure on Doc Pone down to 19, but now it is Spreading Plague or Jade Behemoth time for the Canadian player. I have to think that this is actually a tough decision because Jade Behemoth does give Doc Pone a minion that will actually kill some of the minions that Hoy has. And Spreading Plague actually gets better as time goes on because of Living Mana specifically.
Yes.
Your Jade Behemoth is always going to be a 3/6 taunt. But if your opponent does Living Mana against you, your Spreading Plague can often be 7 Scarabs rather than 3 it would be right now. So I think that's what Doc Pone is considering here, whether he wants to try to just defend himself with the Plague, or maybe actually exchange and get some of Hoy's bodies off the board with the Behemoth.
Yeah, Jade Behemoth seems to contest the board very well. You even have the leftover 1/1 and potentially get that little bit extra damage.
I wonder if you could even make an argument for playing Aya here.
I think the threat of Savage Roars is really big. There's 5 plus 8, so it's 13. Yeah, I guess you could technically get away with it. Still a scary proposition, though, if you're trying to let your opponent deal as much damage as possible.
But one of the arguments to potentially playing Aya there is that if you play the Behemoth, your opponent can't really play a Living Mana that well, and you kind of want them to play Living Mana with the Plague in your hand, maybe.
Right.
But regardless, this Behemoth is quite the roadblock here. Only 5 power on the board for Hoy, so he'll have to either use his hero power or the Savage Roar to help punch through. And I imagine there's a good chance he wants to hold to that Savage Roar to actually end up as a finisher.
It's hard to say, too, because Living Mana only summons 4 Treants. It's limited by the amount of space you have on board. So he would go down to 1 Mana Crystal, which means he only has 2 the following turn. Can't even Savage Roar guaranteed. And most players will know to not give you enough Mana Crystals to Savage Roar. So it's not even like Hoy can set up a very clean 1-2 play here with the cards in hand.
Yep.
So if he uses Savage Roar, he can get through the Jade Behemoth and hopefully let this 3/4 do a little bit more damage. Maximum pressure coming here for Hoy. Doc Pone has a couple answers here ready for him.
Ooh, the swipe is actually a really big draw to follow up a Spreading Plague potentially. Yeah. Because if your opponent is bumping each of those treants into one guy, 2 by 2, 1 by 1, whatever, they all often will end up with just 1 health left, and that allows your swipe to take out the entire board once they've been softened up by the Scarabs.
There is a punish though with buffs on the Living Mana tokens. But we know that Hoy does not have that whatsoever, so he is just trying to go for maximum pressure and hope that Doc Pone is going to play offensive cards. What to do? Spreading Plague looks pretty appetizing though when you think about it. However, Toy made a play that maximized the amount of pressure on for the minions. Very confident. He didn't open up his mana to potentially play Power of the Wild. So maybe Dakpon will be scared and will want to immediately limit the amount of damage on board by using Swipe Distance.
Yeah, by attacking in first here, Dakpon obviously is able to set himself up to get an additional Scarab because he has one fewer minion, and now his Behemoth able to take down the buffed Firefly. And now, Ahoy has actually less power in play, or not, barely more than Dakpon here.
Now, several players, when we were talking to them, were talking about how they just don't have faith in Aggro Druid for the ability to close out games, even the matches that they should win. Sometimes you can just fizzle because your opponent stabilizes. And unlike a lot of other aggressive decks, it doesn't have ways to just end the game with crazy bursts without a board.
Yeah.
And in this case, Hoy has gotten locked out again. This will be the second game of the series that Aggro Druid has fallen.
It's not looking good for him here, especially with that swipe in Dakpon's hand. With only one mana crystal available this turn, Hoy can only attack. He can't even hero power this turn. He can only figure out exactly how he wants to maneuver these mana treants into the Scarabs and Behemoth on Dakpon's side of the board. And Dakpon's still at 19.
Time waits for no one.
I mean, again, Dakpon had the luxury of doing this. He could have also, if he didn't have it, he would have Swipe, reduce a lot of the power onto the board. Hoy would be able to Savage Roar for some damage, but wouldn't be able to finish the game. So the Spreading Plague is back-breaking. Hoy does not even attack, doesn't even want to give his opponent the opportunity to swipe without attacking into the minions first. Also, by attacking into these minions, you also let your opponent just remove the board straight up.
And now Dakpon can decide, okay, do I want to pick apart some of these minions? He can also choose, if he wanted to just leave up the treants and prevent Hoy from getting more mana crystals. But the fact that Hoy is going to have 3 next turn no matter what means that Savage Roar is available. So, understandably, Dakpon is going to pick away at this board.
I think it doesn't really matter. I think the Scarabs, their art says it all. There'll be no passing across their side of the board, and Dakpon, once again, will just crush the Aggro Druid's hopes with situational and awkward cards in Hoy's hand right now.
There's a Corridor Creeper, once again, not drawn. I mean, he's got enough mana for it now. He's on turn 7, he can play a 7-drop.
And again, how important is it that Hoy was not able to land those Market Yashiraj with the early game? Dakpon's been prioritizing early removal because he knows of how important it is.
I concede.
And that's going to do it here. Hoy concedes. Dakpon is 1 game away from winning the first series here in HCJ Amsterdam.
And this was a matchup that a lot of people felt like Hoy had a big edge in, but Dakpon has been able to maneuver his decks really to punish specifically that Aggro Druid deck. It has not served Hoy well.
All right, well, we are just getting to the wire here. What's going to happen in Game 4? Will Dakpon close it out, or will Hoy tie it up once again? We'll be back right after this.
My favorite trailer is the One Night in Karazhan trailer. I love the music.
Come inside, meet your friends at the door.
So I do a little, I get groovy, do a little spinning.
This is a place of funky magical phenomena.
I think Hearthstone does a pretty good job of going to oh, this is a dark theme like we did in old guides, and then going back to a light theme.
Anything goes for one night in Karazhan.
Blackrock was cool because it felt powerful, and there was nostalgia there. I remember running that raid in WoW.
Have you heard the rumblings?
It just felt menacing and dangerous.
Fire made flesh, dragon's breath. It's gotta be the goblins and gnomes. Goblins and gnomes. Goblins
and gnomes. Goblins and gnomes.
Especially when the guy hits the high note and he says, explode, that thing. That was like especially catchy one.
Perfecting imperfection. Goblins and gnomes.
I think for me, the League of Explorers is probably my favorite of all the cinematics we've done in the past.
We've climbed every cliff on Black Rock. Now the world cries out for heroes.
It's one that really captured the spirit of adventure that really was what we were trying to get across with the League of Explorers.
There will be danger. There will be doom.
It probably is the Grand Tournament.
From east to west, heroes are sent.
And just the fanfare with the music.
There are knights on noble steeds, those who will bring them to their knees.
The whimsy of it.
There's even pirates riding parrots.
But they just keep getting better, it seems.
It's the Grand Tournament.
All of them.
Pull up a chair by the hearth and welcome to Amsterdam. This is the Hearthstone World Championship.
Welcome back, everybody. Live from Amsterdam, as you get a shot of the wonderful crowd. A big shout out. It's, 9 a.m. on a Thursday, and all these Dutch people came up to cheer on their favorites in Hearthstone, as we are currently in the middle of our first best-of-5 kickoff match between Doc Bone, who's up 2-1 over Hoy. And we'll find out whether or not the underdog can start off HCT with the way it was designed, which is to give names to players who are currently unknown and potentially become the next superstar.
And this is a matchup where Hoy's Aggro Druid, which has struggled so far, does have the edge. And this is a place where Aggro Druid tends to shine because you have a lot of cheap minions, you have a lot of ways to buff your minions and ways to build a wide board against a deck that is less suited to dealing with that kind of strategy.
That's correct. These last two matches are favorable matchups for Hoy, at least on paper. And Aggro Druid is definitely one of the more problematic ones for the Tempo Rogue. Not too many bad matchups for this Rogue deck because it has so many good, powerful plays. But at the same time, if you're able to get a really fast start with the Tempo Rogue, you also have some games against the Druid. Backstab is going to be one of those important cards, but without it in the opening hand here, Doc Bone is just going to have to hope that these Pirates are enough.
And speaking of Pirates, one of the things that makes the Aggro Druid deck powerful against Tempo Rogue is Galaka Crawler. And that's something that has to be in the back of Doc Pone's mind as he has a hand here that's just full of Pirates. There's nothing he can do other than get these Pirates out and hope that Crawler is not waiting for him to play his hand.
Right off the bat, something to consider. If you play this Patches, that makes your Southsea Captain much worse. And your turn 3 play ends up most likely going to be a vanilla minion unless you want to save it with the Southsea deckhand on turn 4. So these are things that Doc Bone has to consider. What's the value of getting this Swashbuckler Tempo in early card?
And also, this Dire Mole is one of the few cards that has really found its way into Aggro Druid from the new set. And it's a huge one in a matchup like this. The 3 health beast that you can play on turn 1 is great in this situation. Just look at this. The 1/3 is able to kill potentially both of these pirates if they were to attack into it, and use the dagger. Also a great body for those Mark of Yashirajas that Hoy has found himself stranded in his hand, unable to play on beasts in previous games.
That's right. And another big thing too is that Hoy has that early quarter creeper, so with all these cheap minions dying, he can plant a really powerful minion and deny Rogue from being able to accelerate any tempo, even if they were to generate it. At best, they'd be able to react.
I wonder
And Hoy's rest of his hand is also quite powerful. Bloodcell Corsair in his hand to get his own patches, along with that Mark of the Lotus. I mentioned at the beginning of the game, and here we are at turn 2, still kind of the beginning of the game,
yes.
That the Rogue is generally ill-suited to dealing with boards that do go wide, and Hoy has the ability to make 3 2-power minions next turn. And now Doc Pone, despite having that Captain in hand, might just be trading his board off here in order to prevent that eventuality.
Just wants Hoy to do the trading for him. Doesn't want to give it up, and plus wanted to power up his South Sea Captain best he can. And this ends up being a huge punish from Hoy when he has this Bloodsteel Corsair deny the weapon, which means South Sea Deckhand doesn't have the charge if he needed to, and also be able to buff his board.
Yeah, this is a really, really big opportunity for Hoy to take the initiative in the game. The Corsair bringing his patches, Mark of the Lotus, buffing all 3 minions, able to clear off both the pirates if he so chooses.
Be hard-pressed not to do it. Bloodsteel Corsair comes out, pulling the patches, and this is a big swing that could be too late for Doc Pone to stabilize unless he's able to get bigger tempo cards into his hand, because he's got awkward combo stuff right now.
Yeah, and a lot of the cards in Doc Pone's hand are great in the right situation. You know, the Captain would have been fantastic if these 2 pirates lived.
Exactly.
And the Minstrel, great against removal-based decks, not so hot here. And now even the weapon removal from the Corsair means that Doc Pone has to hero power in order to even play one of these deckhands to give it charge.
That's right. And because 3 minions are dying, guess what becomes 2 mana all of a sudden? Corridor Creeper, 2 mana 5/5, and then some.
In the set reviews, he was a sleeper. No more. It's Corridor Creeper.
That's right. Or is it? I mean, it's a pretty powerful play. Turn 4 is often a little bit awkward for Rogue. I mean, some of them are even indecisive of what they're putting in. You know, some of them are putting Standard Chain Gang, some people are taking it out and trying to go for a turn 5 power spike. Look at Cobalt Scalebane. That's also under discussion, whether or not it should be in Rogue decks. If you're trying to kill Priest, absolutely. But if not, maybe perhaps something else. So this could be the time for Corridor Creeper to shine the most. And also, if your opponent also has Corridor Creeper, you want the action. You want to be able to set the 5/5, play the Power of the Wild, get the trades.
Yeah, and this is Hoy tried to maximize his mana over the next 2 turns. He has the Direwolf Alpha plus Power of the Wild if he wants to play last turn, or next turn rather. So he just wants to use his coin now to set up, okay, I'm using all of my cards.
Right.
And this is exactly the kind of scenario that the Rogue struggles in, because you know, even if he finds a Vile Spine Slayer and a Backstab over his next 2 draws, there's still just going to be a really strong wide board that'll be difficult for Doc Pone to deal with.
I wonder.
Well, Doc Pone also didn't get much help from the Druid card. Forbidden Ancient would be really nice if it was only a 1 mana card, because you could combo it later on. But it's just going to sit dead. And kind of what we were mentioning, the fact that Pirates got pulled out early from Doc Pone means he can't go for that decisive board swing. Finally gets Corridor Creeper, but that's also a little bit too late because he can't fight for any reasonable amount of tempo right now. His best play is South Sea Captain and the Deckhand.
Yeah, which isn't enough to remove the Corridor Creeper here. Yeah, Doc Pone can get some removal going, but it just does not match up well against Hoy's board. Forbidden Ancient is just making himself a 4/4. All right, and yeah, this is a very awkward play into Hoy's board as it stands right